Hello, my name is Suzanne and our psalm for Friday the 9th of October is Psalm 10. Why, Lord, do you stand far off? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble? In his arrogance the wicked man hunts down the weak, who are caught in the schemes he devises. He boasts about the cravings of his heart, he blesses the greedy and reviles the Lord. In his pride the wicked man does not seek him. In all his thoughts there is no room for God. His ways are always prosperous, your laws are rejected by him. He sneers at all his enemies. He says to himself, nothing will ever shake me. He swears, no one will ever do me harm. His mouth is full of lies and threats. Trouble and evil are under his tongue. He lies in wait near the villages. From ambush he murders the innocent. His eyes watch in secret for his victims. Like a lion in cover, he lies in wait. He lies in wait to catch the helpless. He catches the helpless and drags them off in his net. His victims are crushed, they collapse, they fall under his strength. He says to himself, God will never notice. He covers his face and never sees. Arise, Lord, lift up your hand, O God. Do not forget the helpless. Why does the wicked man revile God? Why does he say to himself, he won't call me to account? But you, God, see the trouble of the afflicted. You consider their grief and take it in hand. The victims commit themselves to you. You are the helper of the fatherless. Break the arm of the wicked man. Call the evildoer to account for his wickedness, that would not otherwise be found out. The Lord is king forever and ever. The nations will perish from his land. You, Lord, hear the desire of the afflicted. You encourage them and you listen to their cry, defending the fatherless and the oppressed, so that mere earthly mortals will never again strike terror. As Helen mentioned on Wednesday when we were considering Psalm 9, Psalm 10 is the second half of what was originally one acrostic psalm. Whilst for me Psalm 9 was more upbeat and a psalm of praise and thanks for the judgment that the Lord brings as he protects the needy and the poor, this second part, Psalm 10, has David crying out to the Lord to bring judgment once more on the wicked. We begin with a passionate and desperate cry which, if we are honest, could probably be said by each of us, especially in the difficult situation that we are living through. Why, Lord, do you stand far off? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble? When life is hard, when our own situations or those of the people we love and care about seem unfair, then it's all too easy to utter those words or something similar. Hopefully we will see that although David begins with these thoughts in his psalm, it's not where he ends up. David continues in Psalm 10 to plead on behalf of others who are being hunted down, oppressed, exploited by a wicked man, a person with power and authority, who is using that power and authority to prosper himself and crush those on whom he stands. When I was reading this psalm, my first thoughts were of places around the world that I've visited, where the leadership seems to be out for their own ends, where those few who are in power and authority have much, and the majority of the people are oppressed and exploited. I want to cry out David's opening line for those brothers and sisters whom I've met, because I cannot see what else I can do from such a distance. Why, Lord, do you stand far off? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble? Maybe there are places around our world that you want to make the same cry for. And then when I was talking to Graham as I was considering this psalm, I was reminded of the story that Jesus told at the beginning of Mark 7. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way as you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye, and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? Whilst I may not be devising schemes to hunt down the weak or murder the innocents, how often do I consider the situation of the person who produced the food I buy, whether they are being exploited and underpaid? How often do I consider the work conditions of the person, possibly even the children, who made the clothes that I can buy so cheaply? How often do I consider the hourly rate of the supermarket worker in our own country, who works the night shift so that the shelves are full for me to find what I'm looking for tomorrow? My choices, our choices, matter to the outcome of other people's lives, and before I judge the multi-millionaire business leaders on their attitude to the poor, the needy, the weak, I think I need to take the plank out of my own eye. And at Westborough's last church meeting, the church recommitted itself to be a fair trade church. Why don't we think about being a fair trade person as well as a fair trade church? And then on the radio this week, I heard an interview with David Attenborough, which I think is part of something being broadcast on television next week, but I didn't catch what it was. It made me stop and rewind the radio to make sure that I had heard correctly. And I think it fits so well with this psalm today and the final outcome that David talks of in the second half. See if you agree. Speaking of the ecological emergency facing us all, David Attenborough said, "We need to rethink what we mean by economic success. At present, we believe that the bigger the profit is at the end of the year, then the better the success is. But that is only okay in the short term." He went on to say, "Ordinary people worldwide are beginning to realise that greed doesn't actually lead to joy." What really intrigued me was that David Attenborough used the word joy and not happiness. Joy is so much more than happiness. One article I found described the differences between joy and happiness as happiness is an emotion in which we experience feelings ranging from contentment and satisfaction to bliss and intense pleasure, whereas joy is a stronger, less common feeling than happiness. We experience joy when we achieve selflessness to the point of personal sacrifice. We feel joy when we are spiritually connected to God or people. As we make our choices, as we choose to be less self-centred and more selfless, more sacrificial in how we think of and treat others and the planet, choosing to look at others with the eyes of Jesus, then we become more connected to him and more joyful. David concludes Psalm 10 with, "But you, God, see the trouble of the afflicted. You consider their grief and take it in hand. The victims commit themselves to you. You are the helper of the fatherless. The Lord is king forever and ever. The nations will perish from his land. You, Lord, hear the desire of the afflicted. You encourage them and you listen to their cry, defending the fatherless and the oppressed, so that mere earthly mortals will never again strike terror." So when we are crying out for ourselves, our loved ones, and those who are so dear to us around the world, and it seems like the Lord is far off and hiding, we can be assured that he is never far off. He never hides. The Lord knows. The Lord hears. He does defend the weak, the oppressed, the fatherless, and the needy. My challenge to us all is, do we know? Do we hear? Do we make a stand for those who cannot do so for themselves?